looks better than what my bed normally looks like. I tried cycle tracking for 3 months to try to prevent pregnancy without using birth control, condoms, and things like that. And after 3 months, I was pregnant. Oops. I'm going to share with you what I did to cycle track, why I did cycle tracking as a means of birth control, and what I'm going to do differently this time around to make sure that I can go on my 10-year anniversary trip that I have planned for this fall without being pregnant. So my name is Nicole, and people try cycle tracking for a lot of different reasons. For me personally, I wanted to track my cycle as a way to prevent my second pregnancy after my first pregnancy without using birth control, condoms, and other contraceptives like that. And there's a lot of different feelings about birth control, but my biggest reason why I didn't want to get back on birth control was because we had a really hard time getting pregnant for my first son. And you really can't tell exactly why that happened, but I had been on birth control for at least, I think, 6 or 7 years before trying to get pregnant. And there's a lot of new information coming out that says being on birth control for a lot of years, it messes with your natural cycle, because basically what it does is it introduces either estrogen and progestin or just progestin into your body to trigger your brain to say, oh, I don't need to release an egg for ovulation. And so it doesn't, and you don't go through the same menstrual cycle because you never actually ovulate. And because you don't ovulate for that long, I don't know, maybe it's harder for your cycle to come back, but basically I didn't want to go back on birth control because I felt like I didn't want to confuse my body again. I knew I wanted to have more kids, and so I thought, like, I'm just going to try other methods. And I had heard so many great things about cycle tracking, and as someone that cares about women's health, being a physical therapist, like, I just really am interested in how the body works. I like to keep things as natural as possible, and so I just didn't want to be on a medication like birth control again. Unfortunately though, after you have babies, your cycle is a little bit wonky. So when you're cycle tracking, basically you want to track when your period starts, you want to track when you're ovulating, and then when your next cycle starts again. And then you look at how many days that whole cycle is, you look at on what day you typically ovulate. Really, you want to do several cycles and start to notice patterns. And when you're newly postpartum and your period is just coming back, it's not really very regular. At least for me, it wasn't. And so I was kind of like, okay, where are we at in the cycle? A lot of people use tracking your basal body temperature, and basically you just take your temperature every morning at the same time before you get out of bed, and you track it every single day, and you start to notice patterns. And when you'll see your temperature is this, and then at ovulation it goes up just a little bit, and it'll be just a little bit higher after ovulation. And that number, it's not like you're looking for an exact number because everybody's normal is a little bit different, so you're more looking at trends. Some people track the position of your cervix, so they put fingers into their vagina and they kind of track, okay, where is my cervix? And I'm going to just show you this little picture because I think this is really helpful. I just did a quick search of like monthly tracking, cycle tracking with your cervix position, and this is the picture that I found, and it was really helpful. This is going to sound really weird because I'm a physical therapist and I do pelvic floor exams all the time, which means I insert a finger or two into women's vaginas all the time, but I do not like to do it to myself. This is so weird, I know, but that's just me. So anyways, I don't really like to do that, so I never actually track the position of my cervix because basically during ovulation, your cervix is higher, and as you can see, I'll pull up this picture again, you can kind of see how it moves from low to high throughout your cycle and then, circles around. So I didn't do that. So I wasn't tracking my temperature and I wasn't tracking my cervix position, which definitely would have helped me get a more accurate picture of when I was ovulating because like I said, after about 3 months, whoops, we were pregnant earlier than I was expecting. It turned out awesome. I got a little boy out of the deal and I wouldn't trade him for the world. Like I said, we were planning to have another anyways. I wasn't planning on my 2 boys to be quite that close together. 20 months is doable, but it's kind of a lot on your body. So I basically was like, okay, after my second son, I am going to try this again. And my cycle actually just returned about 2 months ago. And people might think I'm crazy, but I'm going to do this again. And I just don't really like condoms, especially because I'm still breastfeeding. Have my levels of estrogen are a little bit off yet, which leads to vaginal dryness, which makes sex a little bit more uncomfortable because I don't have my own natural mucus like I did before I had kids and when I'm not breastfeeding. So using a condom and introducing that, even with a lot of lube, still feels uncomfortable to me. So I'm just not a big fan, but definitely we could use them. I just don't want to. And so we're trying to cycle track. So I tracked when my period started again, and I can actually feel when my body's ovulating. It just feels like sore down in my lower abdomen, and it's uncomfortable. And when I kind of track it out, it seems like that's probably the time I'm ovulating. So I'm looking for that. And then the other thing I really rely on pretty heavily is cervical mucus. You want it to look like an egg white texture. So if you took an egg white and you kind of like put it between your fingers, how it's like sticky and it's thick, that is what your discharge is going to look like during ovulation. So you're looking for that, and that's how you can kind of know, okay, that is when I'm ovulating. The trick is, it's not good enough just to know when you're ovulating. This is probably where we went wrong with when we got pregnant with my second. You also have to take some kind of measures when you're ovulating to make sure that no sperm is introduced when you're ovulating. So during ovulation, your egg is only there for about 12 to 24 hours. And unless sperm is in the same vicinity as the egg, there's no possible way to get pregnant. You cannot get pregnant every day of your life. No. A female has about 12 to 24 hours to get pregnant. Now, the caveat to that is that sperm can stay in the body. The research I did said for about 5 days it can live. So if you had sex 5 days before you ovulated, then your egg comes down and there's the sperm like in there and ready, you could still get pregnant. So it's not like, okay, as long as I don't have sex right when I'm ovulating, I'll be good. That's not actually true. So you need to be a little bit careful about that. And that is probably the danger about just cycle tracking and knowing when you're ovulating, when you're just kind of getting a feel for how long your cycle is, because you actually need to not have sex like 5 days before you ovulate, otherwise you could still get pregnant. What is my husband doing out there? Anyways, so if you want to kind of find trends and know, okay, I usually ovulate, it's not always on day 14, so don't be confused about that either. You need to know when you specifically ovulate. I am closer to day 21, so I need to be really careful and either use a condom, not have sex, or effectively, note the keyword, effectively pull out before ejaculation to make sure that we don't get pregnant. And so that is what we are doing differently this time around. We will be much more cautious in those days around ovulation. And as I'm just starting to get back into my cycle, I want to make sure I'm giving myself a bigger buffer. Like, okay, I think I'm going to ovulate on day 20. It's been around day 20. Giving myself like 8 to 10 days before that where we're really cautious with having sex versus just, you know, waiting till I can feel that I'm ovulating and then being cautious, because I'm pretty sure that's how our second son was conceived. Anyways, you definitely need your partner to be on board with helping you if you are going to go the pull-out method, or just use condoms if you want to be safe, or you can always do things, you know, oral things otherwise if during that time when you think you might be ovulating. That is my experience with cycle tracking. I am no expert on it. I am not certified or anything. This is just the research I have done personally. I actually interviewed Leisha on my channel a few weeks ago. She is a coach that helps with tracking your hormones and teaches about cycle tracking and things like that. But some people think that this is just an old school way of thought and it doesn't work. But if you know what you're doing and you execute it correctly, it actually can be a really effective way to prevent pregnancy without using birth control. So stay tuned on my channel because hopefully you will get an update this late this summer that says I actually did go on my 10-year anniversary trip and I wasn't pregnant and that cycle tracking worked. And if it didn't work, then maybe I will just delete this video forever because obviously my opinion and what I did for cycle tracking was no good at all. That's all for this video. I will see you guys all in the next one.